Here's a little trivia for you. Dragon Quest XI was the very first game announced for the Nintendo Switch. Back in 2015, Square Enix announced that Dragon Quest XI would be coming to the PlayStation 4, Nintendo 3DS, and Nintendo NX. Yeah, the Switch didn't even have a name at that point. It was still just some ambiguous upcoming Nintendo hardware. Then, all of a sudden, 3 years passed, and Dragon Quest XI was released worldwide for the PlayStation 4 and PC. The 3DS version never left Japan. There was no Switch version, and people were curious as to what happened. Another 2 weeks passed, and then Square Enix officially re-announced Dragon Quest XI for Switch, now called Dragon Quest XI-S. Or if you want to go with the proper title, Dragon Quest XI-S, Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. Now, just over a year removed from its re-announcement, Dragon Quest XI-S is finally here. So how is it? This video isn't going to be a standalone review. I'll be looking at how the Switch version stacks up to the PlayStation 4 version, as well as critiquing all the newly added content. If you need to be brought up to speed, check out my review of the PlayStation 4 and PC versions of the game at the link in the top right corner, and then come back here. I'll give you a moment to check that out. All caught up? Good. Now let's get started. This supplemental review is based on a physical retail copy of the game for the Nintendo Switch. Let's get the biggest thing out of the way first, the visuals. The good news is the frame rate is solid, sticking to the PS4 version's 30 frames per second. The resolution, however, is where the main conflict lies. The game runs at an upscaled 1080p when docked and an upscaled 720p in handheld. However, both resolutions feature significantly compressed visuals. Edges are much more jagged on Switch than on PS4 or PC. The draw distance is noticeably shorter, and the lighting is nowhere near as good. It's to be expected from the Nintendo Switch version of such a massive game. I wasn't expecting a perfect one-to-one visual translation from the PS4. The degree to which everything has been downgraded did initially catch me off guard, but I think the Switch version still looks pretty good. Let's compare some scenes on the Switch to the PS4. I'll be playing the PS4 version on the PS4 Pro, but not in upscaled 4K. Trust me, I won't need to play in 4K for you to notice the difference. Here's the cutscene from a top cobblestone tour at the beginning of the game. This scene really shows off the difference in lighting quality. For what it's worth, the Switch version looks okay. It's just that the PS4 version looks nicer. Everything is sharper, the colors are richer, it simply looks better on PlayStation 4. Here's the scene where the hero meets with King Carnelian. Again, it's decent on Switch, but the PS4 version is markedly better. The textures are flatter on Nintendo Switch. Additionally, the lighting isn't as advanced either. On PS4, Hendrick's black armor and Jasper's silver armor both have realistic specular highlights. The Nintendo Switch version has been downgraded by comparison. All that said, when the Switch version looks good, man, it really looks good. Here's the scene where Eric and the hero discover the sewer dragon. It still doesn't look as good as the PS4 version, but I think it looks great on Switch. Additionally, Dragon Quest XI-S looks absolutely beautiful in handheld mode. Since the smaller screen hides many of the visual flaws, Dragon Quest XI-S on the go looks fantastic. This is arguably one of the better looking AAA games on the Switch tablet screen. Let me put it like this. If you're completely new to Dragon Quest XI, you probably won't be too put off by these things. It may strike you as a little flat or underwhelming at times, but the game will still look really good. If you're a repeat player like me, however, the difference is stark. Yes, the Switch still looks good in its own right, at times even looking great. After playing for an hour or two, you'll hardly even notice the graphics anymore, if at all. But it's likely a significant number of returning Dragon Quest XI players won't be thrilled with the compressed 3D graphics. The 16-bit graphics, on the other hand, are phenomenal. This is the first time the 2D version of Dragon Quest XI has officially been released in the West. Dragon Quest XI-S in 2D finds its comfort zone along the well-worn path as it masterfully channels its 16-bit forebears. Playing in 2D feels like being transported back to the early 90s, as the visuals seem like they were lifted right off of Super Famicom. I do wish that switching between the two graphical styles was easier to do. You can only change graphics at a save point, and when changing between the two, you have to restart from a previous checkpoint. It's hard to tell what milestones the game considers an acceptable checkpoint. As a result, you can occasionally lose over an hour of progress. If you want to play in both 2D and 3D, I recommend making a separate save file for each style whenever changing graphics. This way, if you change your mind about redoing anything, you can just load back into whatever mode you were playing before and press onwards. It kinda sucks that you can't swap between styles on the fly, but given how drastically different the 2D style is to the 3D style, it's an understandable accommodation. 2D mode isn't just old school in looks, it has old school mechanics as well. It's ostensibly what Dragon Quest XI would have been had it actually come out on the Super Famicom. The 2D style is, at its core, a traditional 16-bit JRPG. This means it has all the 16-bit JRPG tropes, complete with random encounters played in Dragon Quest's classic first-person perspective. How you feel about 2D mode hinges on how you feel about classic JRPGs. Dragon Quest XI's in 2D doesn't renounce its roots. It embraces them, along with all the pros and all the cons. Personally, I love the 2D style. Overall, Dragon Quest XI's looks great. The frame rate is solid, and the 3D visuals are anywhere from decent to really good. Sure, the 3D graphics aren't as visually polished as the PS4 or PC release, but whatever concessions were made in 3D mode are more than redeemed by the addition of 2D mode. The 2D style is gorgeous, showcasing the beauty of Erdrea in a fundamentally different way. The fact that 2D mode plays differently makes it feel almost like two completely different games in one package. Speaking of gameplay, there are a number of quality of life updates added on Nintendo Switch. One of the biggest updates is the ability to fast forward battles. You can choose multiple speeds, and it only affects combat, so you don't have to worry about running around the overworld and careening into any enemies or obstacles. Equipment crafting is also improved. You can now use the fun-sized forge at any time, not just at camp. If you're missing any forging materials, you can spend gold to get the materials immediately instead of sourcing them in the wild. I'm so glad they added these changes. Crafting is a lot more accessible now, and players will spend less time running around trying to hunt down specific items to craft better gear. There are a ton of smaller additions as well, such as the ability to change your equipment without affecting your look. Just set your look via outfits, and you can use whatever equipment you want otherwise. There's also a photo mode if that's something that interests you. Here's me strong-arming an old man in Heliodor. All of these things are just the tip of the iceberg that is the refined gameplay. There's a lot more little conveniences now, which makes the game more approachable. There's an air of attentiveness to these changes that I didn't even know I wanted. I feel almost spoiled by them. When I went back to record footage on the PS4 to compare graphics, I was almost taken aback by how inelegant the PS4's mechanics were after acclimating to the improvements on Switch. That's how fantastic these seemingly subtle changes are in practice. Some of the more overt changes are found in the game's audio. One of the biggest additions to Dragon Quest XI's is the fully orchestrated soundtrack. And once you hear the symphonic score, literally why would you ever want to go back? I love the orchestral music, even with the 16-bit graphics. If you download the DLC, you can also change the overworld music to Dragon Quest VIII's music, both synthesized and symphonic. This is one of my favorite changes, and I ended up just leaving the overworld music on Dragon Quest VIII's symphonic score. New to the game is the Japanese dialogue. If you've been dying to play the game in Japanese, then you can rest easy. The Japanese voice acting is fantastic. English is also still available and is just as good as it was on the PS4. Personally, I prefer the Japanese voice acting, but I will say that you're losing something by playing in Japanese if you don't understand the language. The English version is so great at capturing the essence of the Erdrean people. This exists in the Japanese version too, of course, but it's obviously more difficult to grasp without knowing Japanese.
おじいちゃんから聞いたの。あの神の岩には大地の精霊様が宿ってるんだって。
My granddad's been teaching me the prayer ever since I was little. He reckons the spirit of the land really does live on Cobblestone Tor, you see.
Even if you're a Japanese voice acting fanatic, I'd say give the English voice acting a fair chance. They're both great, and you can always change it back later. Another fantastic new addition is Tickington. Tickington is a town populated by Tockles, which are those little ghosties you see all around Erdrea. Within Tickington is the Echo Chamber, a room that hosts the written history of Dragon Quest. Something has gone awry in these past Dragon Quest games, and it's up to you to enter those worlds and set things right. Entering a previous Dragon Quest game requires you to find a special Tockle that possesses the game's password, so be on the lookout for them. One thing to note is that Tickington and its contained content are only available in 2D. Even if you're playing in 3D, you'll be prompted to save before entering, wherein gameplay will change to the 2D perspective. While it would have been great to see all those historic locations in 3D, it's completely understandable why it's in 2D. I'm perfectly happy playing in 2D anyway. The 2D style's traditional mechanics also sell the motif of going back to other worlds to play older games. This is probably my favorite addition to Dragon Quest XI's. It's not a major inclusion, but it brings a nostalgia and reverence for the series' illustrious history that is unmistakable. I've now played through Dragon Quest XI 4 times, once each on the PS4, PC, and 3DS, and now once on Switch. No, the Switch version doesn't look as good as the PS4 or PC versions, but what you lose in the 3D mode's visual fidelity, you gain in the 2D mode, Tickington, quality of life improvements, expanded and improved soundtrack, and new story missions, which are cool, but I'll leave for you to discover on your own. It's absolutely worth your time and attention if you've never played Dragon Quest XI before. More importantly, however, the improvements seen on Switch make it worthy of another playthrough as well. The Switch version is, without exaggeration, the definitive edition. Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition earns a 9.5 out of 10. Now if only they'd bring that 3DS low-poly cel-shaded style to the West too. Be sure to subscribe, click the bell icon, and check out my other content on screen. Thanks for watching.